Good day everyone. Since we are done with Title 8, let us now proceed to our next discussion, which concerns crimes against personal liberty and security as stipulated under Title 9 of the Criminal Law, Book 2. However, before we move on to our next article, let us first redefine the phrase crimes against liberty. So these are the criminal charges that frequently entail an individual being imprisoned or enslaved by other people that is against their will. So at some point, it encompasses the crime of intimidation. So aside from case law, generally speaking, it views as a crime of such conventional behavior of an offender that also occurs in the context of a threat to a victim. So it affects the state of being free within the society. So that defines the crimes against liberty. As we begin, I will be discussing Article 267, entitled Kidnapping and Serious Illegal Detention. So first question, who is likely to be liable for this crime? So in order for us to have a better understanding for it, let us analyze the main elements of this article one by one. So the first element, the offender is a private individual. As it was stated under Article 267, any private individual, meaning anyone or any person could be liable for this crime that are not publicly known or in military services. Because if detaining a person has been committed by a public officer or an employee without any legal ground, then it is known as an arbitrary detention. Second, that he kidnaps or detains another or in any other manner deprives the latter of his liberty. So the most important element under this act is the actual deprivation of an offended party's liberty. So concerning kidnapping and serious illegal detention, it occurs when an accused abducts the victim and forces them to stay put on a certain different location, putting them to harm. And it is always against the will of the victim. Third element, that the act of detention or kidnapping must be illegal. So there are two types of detention, legal detention and illegal detention. So of course, logically speaking, the actual act should be declared unlawful according to its nature, because the defendant cannot be charged with a crime under this article if the act is indeed or proven not. And the person liable under this act shall suffer the penalty of reclusion perpetua to death. So with regards to Article 267, the commission of the offense has four following circumstances that must be present. So first circumstances, if the kidnapping or detention shall have lasted more than 5 days. Second, if it shall have been committed simulating public authority. So it means an offender tried or tend to imitate the appearance or character of a public authority or public officer in order to conduct a criminal act. Third, if any serious physical injuries shall have been inflicted upon the person kidnapped or detained, or if threats to kill him shall have been made. And fourth, if the person kidnapped or detained shall be a minor, female, or a public officer. So palagi nating binabanggit that the intention to deprive the victim of his liberty is an important element for this crime. But if there is a purpose of extorting ransom, then it is considered an essential element in the crime of kidnapping. And for this type of circumstances, death penalty shall be imposed. So the qualifying circumstances includes, first, the purpose is to extort ransom. So meaning refers to the crime of obtaining money or property by using threats of harm against the victim. So there is always an exchange for money. Second, if the victim has been killed, raped, or tortured as a consequences. So, yun nga, palagi-lagi nating binabanggit that the essential element or act which makes the offense kidnapping, as same goes to the illegal detention, is the deprivation of an offended party's liberty under any of the four circumstances enumerated that we already discussed previously. But when the kidnapping or detention was committed for the purpose of extorting ransom, it is not necessary that one or any such circumstances must be present. So as long as the jurisdiction proven that the certain criminal act has the purpose of extorting ransom, then the four following circumstances enumerated under the first paragraph of the Article 267 can be disregarded or already immaterial. And one thing for us to take note, and also in order for us to determine that a detention is illegal, it is not ordered by competent authority or not permitted by law.
Good day, everyone. I am Emmanuel Chua of BSc 25, and this is the Article 268, or the slight illegal detention. The penalty of reclusion temporal shall be imposed upon any private individual who shall commit the crimes described in the next preceding article without the attendance of any of the circumstances enumerated therein. In short, the crime is committed by any private individual, or the offender is a private individual, not a public officer nor a public servant. And second is that he kidnaps the person, or he detains the person, or in any manner of depriving him of his liberty. And third is that the act of kidnapping or detention is in illegal manner or in unlawful way. And fourth is that the crime is committed without the attendance of any of the circumstances involved or enumerated in the Article 267, which is the duration of the crime within 3 days, not more than 3 days, and the offender is simulating as a public officer, or that the serious physical injuries are involved in while the kidnapping is while there is a kidnapping, or the person kidnapped or detained is a female, minor, or public officer. And we should continue that the same penalty shall be incurred by anyone who shall furnish the place for the perpetration of the crime. This involves those persons who furnish the place or prepare the place or the event of the kidnapping or detaining of a person. And last paragraph, if the offender shall voluntarily release the person so kidnapped or detained or within 3 days from the commencement of detention without having attained the purpose intended, and before the institution of criminal proceedings against him, the penalty shall be prisión mayor in its minimum and medium periods, and a fine not exceeding 700 pesos. In this paragraph, that it lowers the penalty if lowers the penalty from reclusion temporal, which is 12 years, 1 day to 20 years, and to prisión mayor, which is 6 years, 1 day to 12 years. And only if the offender surrendered or voluntarily released their victim without any criminal proceedings involved, or it not yet involved the criminal proceedings, it not yet step on any pillar of criminal justice system.
Good day, I'm Emmanuel from PSC 25. Ngayong araw na to ay i-discuss ko ang Article 269 or unlawful arrest. In Tagalog is labag na pag-aresto sa batas. The penalty of arresto mayor and fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who, in any case other than those authorized by law, or without reasonable ground, therefore, shall arrest or detain another for the purpose of delivering him to the proper authorities. Elements of Article 269. First, that the offender arrests or detain another person. Second, that the purpose of the offender is to deliver him to the proper authorities. Third is that the arrest or detention is not authorized by law. Dito sa Article 269 or unlawful arrest, dito natin makikita na ginagamit ng mga kapulisan ang kanilang mga kapangyarihan para mang-aresto ng mga walang muang na individual at hindi talaga lumabag sa batas. Dahil doon pa lang sa title nito is labag na pag-aresto sa batas. Dito, makikita natin or ma-explain ko na sa unlawful arrest article 269 is dito is na kukulong ang isang tao or nadadakip ng mga pulis ang mga tao dahil kahit na hindi naman talaga sila ang lumabag sa batas at minsan ang mga kapulisan lang talaga ang gumagawa ng mga paraan para makulong ang isang individual kahit wala itong nilabag na kasalanan. Magbibigay ako ng mga example na pumapatungkol sa Article 269. First is being forced by an officer to admit to a crime we did not commit. Dito, makikita natin na ginagamit ng pulis o ang pulis ang kanyang kapangyarihan o tinatakot nila yung isang individual na aminin niya isang bagay na hindi naman niya talaga ginawa. Dito, matatakot ng isang individual na aamin nilang siya dahil tinatakot siya o ginagamit ng force ng pulis na aminin niya yung isang bagay kahit hindi naman niya talaga nilabag o ginawa. Second is having a drug or other contraband planted on you. Ito, sa mga nakaraang kong napanood is, example is, nag-search yung mga police or PIDEA doon sa isang bahay. Yung taong hindi talaga gumagamit ng droga. Pagkapasok ng mga pulis, nag-search sila, maya-maya lang, meron talagang positive daw na merong droga na nakuha sila. Dito pa lang mapapaisip tayo, ginagamit niya, pangarihan nila na pinaplantahan nila yung sa bahay niya na may droga para masabi na nag-a-addict talaga yung taong at lumabagin sa anti-drugs. At dahil doon, makukulong yung isang individual na yun na hindi naman talaga gumagamit at yung mga ibang kapulisan na ginagawa nila ang kanilang kapangyarihan sa hindi maganda at illegal para lang masabi na may nahuli sila. Pangatlo, there is no reason to search a car but the officer does not place in handcuff on you. Dito pa lang, bago mo pusasan or dakpin ng isang tao, kailangan basahan mo muna yun ang kanyang karapatan bago mo siya pusasan. Hindi basta-basta pwedeng pusasan ng isang individual dahil meron din tayong lahat ay merong rights na dapat protektahan at ginagalang. At pang-apat is, ang isang tao ay nakulong hindi binabasahan sa kanilang mga karapatan. Dito, bago mo hulihin, pusasan, dakpin, then sa presinto ang isang tao, is kailangan basahan mo muna ng kanyang mga karapatan at ang kanyang nalabag sa batas para kanyang maintindihan. Dahil kung hindi mo to magawa sa isang individual at dinakip mo ito basta-basta, binusasan, dinala sa custody o sa presinto, is pwede ka lumabag na dito sa Article 269. Last is, ang pag-aresto ay sinasagawa ng walang angkop na warrant of arrest. Dito, bago mo hulihin, puntahan, dakpin ang isang tao, napakahalaga na meron kang warrant of arrest na magpapatunay na siya ay kailangang hulihin dahil lumabag sa batas na yun. Dahil kung wala ka nito, hindi mo pinakita ito sa taong dadakpin mo at dinala mo ito sa custody, pinusasan, ay pwede kang lumabag din sa Article 269. And yung pag-search mo sa isang bahay na wala kang search warrant, pwede ka rin lumabag dito sa Article 269. Dahil bago mo pasukin ng isang bahay, kinakailangan mo ng search warrant para bilang authority sa may-ari ng bahay na pasukin mo yung bahay nila at utos ng judge din. And sa Article 269 is masasabi natin na dito is nakapaloob yung mga illegal o labag sa batas na ginagawa ng ibang kapulisan na para lang may makulong sila or may mahuli. Pero sa kung ating isipin na nakakaawa rin yung mga individual na tao na nakukulong sa kulungan na sisihan nila yung mga kasalanan na hindi naman talaga nila nagawa. Dito sa Article 269 na pwede itong ibigay sa mga pulis na gumagawa ng mga illegal na mga tulad ng mga nasabi ko sa example.
Article 270, kidnapping and failure to return a minor. So the penalty in this crime is reclusion perpetua. Then shall be imposed upon any person being entrusted with the custody of a minor person shall deliberately fail to restore the latter to his parents or guardians. So the elements in this crime is that the offender is entrusted with the custody of a minor person, whether or over or under 7 but less than 18 years old. That the next is that he deliberately fails to restore the said minor to his parents. So, yan. Halimbawa nito is si A at X is magkakilala, then si A is may baby. Then pinalagaan niya yung baby niya kay X. Then meron pa ay tulad yung magulang ng bata na alagaan yung baby. Then after nun, hindi binalik ni X si baby. So doon papasok yung kidnapping and failure to return a minor. Next is Article 271, inducing a minor to abandon his home. So the penalty in this crime is prison correctional, and the fine not exceeding 700 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who shall induce a minor to abandon the home of his parents or guardian or the person entrusted with his custody. So the elements of this crime is that the minor, whether over or under 7, is living in the home of his parents or guardian or the person entrusted with his custody. The next is that the offender induce a minor to abandon such home. So ang crime nito, this crime is pwede kahit kanino, but pwede din to sa parents. Halimbawa is separated si A and B, then meron silang anak na babae, for example. Then na kay A yung anak niya, then sinabihan niya yung kanyang anak na huwag ka nang umuwi kay mama mo dahil dito na lang sa akin. So doon pwedeng pumasok yung inducing a minor to abandon his home. So doon papasok yung Article 271.
Article 272 of the Revised Penal Code, Slavery. Elements: 1. That the offender purchases, sells, kidnaps, or detains a human being. Number 2. That the purpose of the offender is to enslave such human being. This crime is committed when the offender purchases, sells, kidnaps, or detains a human being, and the purpose of that is to enslave him. And the penalty is much higher when the offender uses that person in the immoral acts. The penalty of prison mayor and a fine of not exceeding 10,000 pesos shall be imposed upon the offender if the crime be committed for the purpose of assigning the offended party to some immoral traffic. The penalty shall be imposed in its maximum period. As I said earlier, when the offender uses the person in immoral acts, then the maximum period shall be imposed to the offender.
So, good day. I am Kim Heidi C. Naronia and I will tackle the Article 273, Exploitation of Child Labor of RPC. So, ang exploitation po sa Tagalog ay pagsasamantala. So, ano nga ba yung nakapaloob dito sa Article 273? Child labor refers to the exploitation of the children through any form of work, kahit anong trabaho. And also, ito yung mga hadlang or dahilan kung bakit hindi sila nakakapasok sa school regularly. And also, it is physically, mentally, socially, morally harmful sa kanila. And sa Article 273 ay merong tatlong elements. Una dito is that the offender retains a minor in his service. So dito, nakocommit ng any person that who shall detain a minor in his service. Next is that it is against the will of minor. So dito is sapilitan or napilitan lamang. And last is that is under the pretext of reimbursing himself of a debt incurred by ascendant, guardian, or person entrusted with the custody of such minor. So usually ito yung mga magulang na may utang kung saan pinagtatrabaho yung anak para mabayaran o mapunan yung mga pagkakautang nila. And that is unlawful punishable of Article 273 of RPC. Ang penalty dito is prison correctional and its minimum and medium period and also a fine not exceeding 500 pesos.
Article 274. Services rendered under compulsion and payment of debt. The penalty of arresto mayor in its maximum period to prison correctional in its minimum period shall impose upon any person who, in order to require or enforce the payment of a debt, shall compel the debtor to work for him against his will as household servant or farm laborer. And the elements of the crime, which first, that the offender compels the debtor to work for him either as household servant or farm laborer. Second, that it is against the debtor's will. Third, that the purpose is to require or enforce the payment of a debt. So, it is committed by the creditor who shall compel a debtor to work for him as a household servant or as a farm laborer against the will of the debtor in order to require and force the payment of the debt. Confer sa Article 273, kung yung magulang ang may utang tas ipinambayad is yung labor ng anak niya, dito naman sa Article 274, ikaw mismo yung may utang, then in exchange of that, parang pinipilit or kinocompel ka mag-work in order to pay for your debt. So that is also unlawful and is punishable under Article 274, which is services rendered under compulsion in payment of debt.
Chapter 2. Crimes Against Security. Section 1. Abandonment of helpless persons and exploitation of minors. Article 275. Abandonment of person in danger and abandonment of one's own victim. The penalty of arresto mayor shall be imposed upon: first, anyone who shall fail to render assistance to any person whom he shall find in an uninhabited place, wounded or in danger of dying, when he can render such assistance without detriment to himself, unless such omission shall constitute a more serious offense. Second, anyone who shall fail to help or render assistance to another whom he has accidentally wounded or injured. Paragraph 2 of Article 275 applies when a person by chance is injured by the accused. Remember that they use the phrase accidentally in this article. In a case when a person intentionally stab or shoot anyone who is with dead, and he does not render assistance, that person is not held liable under this article, but he will be liable under either physical injury or homicide. And paragraph 3 of this article implies that it would seem that such child also needs some protection that the law intend to extend to the abandoned child shall fail to take him to a safe place. The child must be under 7 years of age. Here are the elements under Article 275, abandonment of persons in danger and abandonment of one's own victim. First, the place is not inhabited. Second, the accused found there a person wounded or in danger of dying. Third, the accused can render assistance without detriment to himself. Fourth, the accused fails to render assistance. Article 276, abandoning a minor. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who shall abandon a child under 7 years of age, the custody of which is incumbent upon him. When the death of the minor shall result from such abandonment, the culprit shall be punished by prison correctional in its medium and maximum periods. But if the life of the minor shall have been in danger only, the penalty shall be prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods. The provisions contained in the two preceding paragraphs shall not prevent the imposition of the penalty provided for the act committed when the same shall constitute a more serious offense. If the perpetrator has no intention of killing the minor and the only purpose is to abandon the minor and the custody of it to avoid the obligation of the latter, if so, this article does not apply. This article requires a permanent, conscious, and deliberate abandonment of minors. Thus, it's not only refer to such action leaving the child, but rather being deprived of health care and protection from danger from anyone. Here are the elements under Article 276, abandoning a minor. First, that the offender has the custody of a child. Second, that the child is under 7 years of age. Third, that he abandons such child. Fourth, that he has no intent to kill the child when the latter is abandoned.
Article 277. Abandonment of minor by person entrusted with his custody. Indifference of parents. The penalty of arresto mayor and the fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone. Giving the example that if you are the parents who is in charge of rearing, taking care of raising a child, or giving education to a child, or shall deliver the minor to a public institution or other persons without the consent of the one who entrusted the child, shall be liable for the crime of Article 277. Same penalty shall be imposed upon the parents who shall neglect their children by not giving them the education which the child station in life required financial condition permits, shall be liable. Specifically, indifference of parents shall be the offender is a parent. Second, that he neglect his children by not giving them education. Third, that his station in life requires such education in this financial conditions permits.
Article 278 of the Revised Penal Code. Exploitation of minors. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium period and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon 1. Any person who shall cause any boy or girl under 16 years of age to perform any dangerous feat of balancing, physical strength, or contortion. 2. Any person who being an acrobat, gymnast, top walker, diver, wild animal tamer, or circus manager engaged in a similar calling shall employ in exhibition of these kinds children under 16 years of age who are not his children or descendants. 3. Any person engaged in any of the callings enumerated in the next paragraph preceding who shall employ any descendants of his under 12 years of age in such dangerous exhibition. 4. Any ascendants, guardian, teachers, or person is entrusted in any capacity with the take care of a child under 16 years of age, who shall deliver such child gratuitously to any person following any of the callings enumerated in the paragraph 2 hereof up to any habitual, vagrant, or beggar. If the delivery shall be made in consideration of any price, compensation, or the promise, the penalty shall in every case of the imposed in its maximum period. In either case, the guardian or curator convicted shall also be removed from office as the guardian or curator, and in the case of the parents, perpetually in the discretion of the court of their parental authority. 5. Any person who shall induce any child under 16 years of age to abandon the home of its ascendants, guardians, curator, or teachers that follow any person engaged in any of the callings mentioned in paragraph 2 hereof, the accompany any habitual, vagrant, or beggar. In this article, it says that any person who will cause any children under the age of 16 to perform, employs, and engage in such dangerous work and tasks that can be harmful for them will be penalized for the penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium period and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos. However, it also applies to any person who has the parental capacity or care for the child under the age of 12 and 16 that have the intention to make children earn money to perform in different activities that can be harmful and dangerous for them will be also penalized. If the delivery shall have been made in consideration of any price, compensation, or promise, the penalty shall in every case be imposed in its maximum period. In either case, the guardian or curator convicted shall also be removed from the office as guardian or curator. And in the case of the parents of the child, they may be deprived temporarily or perpetually in the discretion of the court or their parental authority. Example is yung sa number 1, yung bata, 16 years old, naging acrobat ng dahil sa'yo. And number 2, nag-employ ka ng bata, acrobat, pero di mo naman anak or descendants. The penalty will be minimum to medium of prison correctional. Number 3, descendant mo yung acrobat or anak pero under the 12 years of age. And number 4, mas matanda ka ng purpose nyo ng acrobat na naglilimos. And 5, nangungumbinsi ka na sa acrobats na parang sinasabi mo na lumayas ng bahay, umalis para sumama sa mga makakasama sa bata like dangerous acts, ganun. Magiging penalty mo is prison correctional to maximum period. Article 279 of the Revised Penal Code. Additional penalties for the other offenses. The imposition of the penalties prescribed in the preceding article shall not prevent the imposition upon the same person of the penalty provided for any other felonies defined and punished by the code. In this article, it says that not all penalties will apply on the same acts. For example, in the acts number 1 of the Article 278, the penalty will be prison correctional minimum to medium period. And for the Act number 1 of the Article 278, the penalty will be prison correctional to maximum period. Also, it says that the provisions of the other article will not be applied on the Article 278 unless it can only be added. Sinasabi lang dito sa Article 279 na ang penalty ng other article na nakomit ay hindi pwedeng maging penalty ng Article 278 bagkos ito ay pwede lamang makadagdag at hindi pwedeng maging penalty nito. Dahil ang penalty ng Article 278 ay masasabi nating parang isang nakapix na bawal nang baguhin.
Let's proceed to the section 2 of the Title 9, Crimes Against Liberty and Security. Section 2 involves the trespass to dwelling, and under this section is the provision of Article 280, the qualified trespass to dwelling. It is stated that any private person who shall enter the dwelling of another against the latter's will shall be punished by arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 1,000 pesos. And the next paragraph, if the offense be committed by means of violence or intimidation, the penalty shall be prison correctional in its medium and maximum period, and the fine not exceeding 1,000 pesos. In this trespass to dwelling, we must remember these three elements: that the offender is a private person, because it differs from the violation of domicile. If the offender is a public officer, the first element distincts the violation of domicile in Article 128 and the trespass to dwelling in Article 280. And next is that he enters the dwelling of another. The private individual entered the dwelling or the house or home of the offended party. And third is the such entrance is against the latter's will. It is against the will of the owner of the house or owner of the dwelling, and he has no consent. He has not consented the entrance of the offender in the dwelling. And in the first and second paragraph differs if the offender just entered the dwelling, and in the second paragraph the entrance of the offender is with intimidation or means of violence. And the third paragraph, the provision of this article shall not be applicable to any person who shall enter another's dwelling for the purpose of preventing some serious harm to himself or the occupants of the dwelling or a third person. It stated that you can enter the dwelling, or the law of qualified trespass to dwelling is not applicable to any person who prevents another if there is a serious harm or danger, and it shall not be also applicable to any person who shall enter the dwelling for the purpose of rendering some service to humanity or justice. If there is a clear violation of violence against women and their children, or any serious physical injuries, and the person or the offender if the person entered the dwelling for rendering some justice to or service to humanity, it is legal since it is included in this provision. And it shall not also be applicable to anyone who shall enter cafes, taverns, inn, and other public houses while the same are open. This qualified trespass to dwelling is not applicable if the establishment is a cafe, tavern, inn, or any other public houses such as hotel or apartment. If the establishment or the building is open for business.
Good day everyone, I'm Mark Anthony Limbok from BSC 2-5. Article 281, Other Forms of Trespass. The penalty of arresto minor a fine not exceeding 200 pesos or both shall be imposed upon any person who shall enter the closed premises or the fenced estate of another while either or them are uninhabited. The prohibition to enter the manifest the trespasser and has not secured the permission of the owner of the caretaker thereof. Base po dito, ang parusa ng aresto ng minor or multang hindi higit sa 200 pesos o pareho ay pataw sa sino mang tao na papasok sa saradong lugar o sa nabakuran na lupain ng iba habang alman o ang mga ito ay walang tirahan kung ang pinagbabawal na pumasok ang lumabag ay hindi nakakuha ng pahintulot ng may-ari o tagapag-alaga nito.
Good day everyone, I'm reporting Article 282, Grave Threats. Any person who shall threaten another with the infliction upon the person, honor or property of latter or of his family, of any wrong amounting to a crime shall suffer, number 1, the penalty next lower in degree than the prescribed by law for the crime be threatened to commit. If the offender shall have made the threat demanding money or imposing any other condition, even thought not unlawful, and said the offender shall have attained his purpose, if the offender shall not have attained his purpose, the penalty lower by 2 degrees shall be imposed. If the threat be made in writing or through a middleman, the penalty shall be imposed in its maximum period. Number 2, the penalty of arresto mayor and the fine not exceeding 500 pesos if the threat shall not have been made subject to a condition. Ang grave threat po ay isang uri ng pagbabanta o pananakot ng isang tao sa kanyang kapwa. Ito ay ginagawa ng iba sa pamamagitan ng social media accounts, messages, letter, at minsan po ay direct to the point na siya na nagbabanta sa kanyang kapwa na gusto niyang bantaan kung anuman ang kanilang alitan. Isang halimbawa na dito ay pag nag-away ang magtropa. Binalikan siya at sinabihan siya na babalikan kita mamaya at may mangyayaring masama sa iyo. Isang uri na po yun ng grave threat o pagbabanta. Isang halimbawa, ako hindi binigyan ng pera ng aking kapatid. Sinabi ko sa kanya na pag hindi mo ako binigyan ng pera, papatayin kita. Isang uri na rin po yun ng grave threat o pagbabanta. Ang penalty po nito ay aresto mayor at may multang hindi higit sa 500 pesos kung ang pagbabanta ay hindi ginawa sa isang kondisyon lamang.
Article 283, Light Threats. Any threat to commit a wrong not constituting a crime made in the manner expressed in subdivision 1 of the next preceding article shall be punishable by arresto mayor. Light threat must be committed with demand for money or imposition of condition. The elements of light threats: first, that the offender makes a threat to commit a wrong; second, that the wrong does not constitute a crime; third, that there is a demand for money or that other condition is imposed even though not unlawful; fourth is that the offender has attained his purpose or that he has not attained his purpose. The crime of light threats is a crime committed by a person who shall who shall threaten another with the infliction upon the person, honor or property of the latter or of his family of any wrong not constituting a crime, and there is a demand for money or condition imposed. On the other hand, other light threats consist of threatening another with a weapon or other harm not constituting a crime during a quarrel. The crime of light threats is punishable by arresto mayor or imprisonment within the range of 1 month and 1 day to 6 months. 284, Bond for good behavior. In all cases falling within the 2 next preceding articles, the person making the threats may also be required to give bail not to molest the person threatened, or if he shall fail to give such bail, he shall be sentenced to destierro. The elements of bond for good behavior. First, when he threatens another under the circumstances mentioned in Article 282. Second, when he threatens another under the circumstances mentioned in Article 283. The person making the threats under the two preceding articles may or the grave and light threats may also be required by the court to give bail conditioned upon the promise not to molest the person threatened.
Article 285, known as other light threats, it was punished by arresto menor. So this article has three elements. First, any person who, without being included in the provisions of the next preceding article, shall threaten another with a weapon or draw such weapon in a quarrel unless it be in lawful self-defense. So, in other words, nilabasan mo siya ng armas. You brandish your gun or you pull out a knife. For example, Mariel was on her way to her house and Patrick approached her. Patrick insulted her and made hand gestures while carrying his bolo or his itak. So Patrick, he was liable under this article because of what he did to Mariel. Yung ginawa niyang pananakot kay Mariel gamit yung bolo niya. Second element, any person who in the heat of anger shall orally threaten another with some harm not constituting a crime and who by subsequent acts shows that he did not persist in the idea involved in his threat, provided that the circumstances of the offense shall not bring it within the provisions of the Article 282 of this code. So sa madaling salita, the threat must be orally and it was made in the heat of anger para maging liable sila sa article na to. For example, Patrick again and Leomar had a heated argument. Nagkakainitan sila. Sinabi ni Patrick, nahahati-hatiin kita. Sabay tinaas niya yung dala niyang bolo or yung dinala niyang itak. So yung mga tao sa paligid niya, hinawakan niya yung kamay niya para pigilan ito. And after that, kumalma naman na si Patrick. So here, if you look at the facts of this case, it says here that is made during the heated argument. And when cooler head intervened, Patrick calmed down. Hindi na siya nag-persist sa idea na hahati-hatiin niya si Leomar. Kaya parang huminto na lang din siya. But still, liable pa din si Patrick under the second paragraph of this article because the threat that he made still came from the heat of his anger. And lastly, any person who shall orally threaten to do another any harm. May pagkakatulad to sa light threat under Article 283. Yung difference lang nila ay sa light threat, merong demand for money or imposition of condition, while sa other light threat, wala. For example of this is, Patrick again was a college professor. He told Lorenzo that he flunked him and give him failing grades. So, liable si Patrick sa third paragraph na to dahil sa pagbabanta niya kay Lorenzo na ibabagsak siya o bibigyan siya ng mababang grado. Pero kung sa light threat naman to papasok, meron siyang condition na ibibigay. And that was the end of my report. Thank you.
Isang magandang umaga, tanghali at hapon. Ako po si Icebreaker Laureles. Article 286, Grave Coercions. Ang ibig sabihin ng grave coercion ay matinding pamimilit sa isang tao na gawin ng isang bagay. Dumako naman tayo sa mga kilos na pinaparusahan sa ilalim ng Artikulo 286. Una, pagpigil sa isang tao na gawin ng isang bagay sa pamamagitan ng paggamit ng karahasan, pagbabanta o pananakot para pigilan ang isang tao na gumawa ng bagay na hindi naman bawal o hindi naman ilikal sa batas. Pangalawa, pagpilit sa isang tao na gawin ang isang bagay sa pamamagitan ng karahasan, pagbabanta o pananakot na gawin ang isang bagay na labag sa kagustuhan ng isang tao tama man o mali, legal man o hindi legal sa batas. Tandaan natin na hindi lang ang compelling o pagpilit sa isang tao gawin ang isang bagay na may tuturing na grave coercion, kundi maituturing din na grave coercion ang preventing o pagpigil sa isang tao na gawin ang isang bagay, compelling and preventing. Under Article 286, there are elements of grave coercions. The first element is that a person prevented another from doing something not prohibited by law. Example, si Juan ay nag-aani ng palay sa isang lupa na inaangkin ni Pedro. Hinarangan ni Pedro si Juan para hindi makapasok sa lupain. May kasama pang 3 tao si Pedro na armado ng bolo. Hinarang nila si Juan sa daanan at sinabing papatayin siya ng mga ito. Dahil sa takot sa kanyang kaligtasan, agad na umalis si Juan sa lugar. Ayon sa batas, wala pa ring karapatan si Pedro at ang mga kasama niya na pigilan si Juan kasi ang pag-aani ng palay ay hindi naman pinagpapawal ng batas. Kung pinag-aawayan naman ng lupa, ang tamang paraan ay magsampa ng kaso o idaan sa legal na proseso. Sa ilalim ng Artikulo 286, ang sunod na nakasaad ay he compelled him to do something against his will, be right or wrong. Example, nawala ang cellphone ni Maria at naghinala na si Juan ang kumuha. Sinabi ni Maria kay Pedro ang tungkol dito. Nang makita si Juan, sinuntok siya ni Pedro at natumba siya. Pinagpatuloy niya ang pagsipa sa kanya sabay sabing, kung hindi mo aaminin na ninakaw mo ang cellphone ni Maria, hindi kita titigilang bugbugin. It is an example of compelling someone to do something against his will. Pilit na pinaamin ni Pedro si Juan to confess to the crime of robbery or theft. Kung si Juan man ang kumuha, walang karapatan si Pedro na gamitan ng dahas na paaminin si Juan. Kahit nasabihin pa natin na tama na paaminin ni Pedro si Juan, sabi nga, be it right or wrong. Again, you cannot compel someone to do something against his will. Next, the second elements. Ang ibig sabihin nito ay pagpigil mo sa isang tao o pagpilit mo sa kanya na gawin ang isang bagay na ginamitan mo ng karahasan, pagpabanta o pananakot. Sa first example natin kanina na nawala ang cellphone ni Maria at pinanginalaan si Pedro. Sinuntok ni Pedro at pinagbantaan si Juan. Sa pangyayaring ito, ginamitan ni Pedro ng karahasan na paaminin si Juan na siya ang nagnakaw ng cellphone. Second example, sa ating second example naman, pagpigil ni Pedro kasama ang 3 na pigilan si Juan na mag-ani ng palay sa pamamagitan ng pananakot at pagbabanta. And the third element, sa madaling salita, wala kang karapatan na pigilan ang isang tao o wala kang karapatan na pilitin siya na gawin ang isang bagay. Example, sina Pedro at Maria ay pinaginalaan si Juan na nagnakaw ng damit sa kanilang kapitbahay. Inutusan nila si Juan na pumunta sa himpilan ng pulisya para sa investigasyon. Nang tumanggi si Juan, hinawakan ni Pedro kasama si Maria at 2 pang tao ang braso ni Juan at hinawakan ang kanyang damit. Kinaladkad nila si Juan sa police station para umamin. May tuturing na grave coercion ang example nito dahil they compelled or forced Juan through violence to go to the police station. Walang karapatan na gawin ito kay Juan. Kung si Juan man ay napatunayan nagnakaw ng damit ng mga kapitbahay, they should file a case at humingi ng tulong sa pulis. They should not put the law on to their hand.
onto their own hands. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed under this article, but when prison mayor shall be imposed. Una, kung ang pamimilit ay ginawa bilang paglabag sa paggamit ng karapatan sa pagboto. Pangalawa, kung ang pamimilit ay nakatuon upang pilitin ang iba na magsagawa ng anumang gawaing panrelihiyon. Pangatlo, kung ang pamimilit ay ginawa upang pigilan ang iba sa pagsasagawa ng anumang gawaing panrelihiyon. Article 287, Light Coercions. Dumako muna tayo sa 4 na elemento ng light coercions. Una, that the offender must be a creditor. Dito sa crime ng light coercion, dapat ay mayroong utang, may nagpautang, at umutang. May creditor and debtor. Example, nakita ni Pedro na ipinarada ni Juan ang kanyang motorsiklo. Humingi si Pedro ng bayad kay Juan ng kanyang utang, ngunit walang pera si Juan. Itinutok ni Pedro ang kanyang baril kay Juan at sinabihan itong isuko ang kanyang motorsiklo bilang bayad sa kanyang utang. Sa example na ito, present ang first element because the offender must be a creditor. Next, second element. Kinuha niya ang anumang pag-aari na may utang sa kanya. Sa binanggit kong example, kanina itinutok ni Pedro ang kanyang baril kay Juan at sinabihan itong isuko ang kanyang motorsiklo bilang bayad sa kanyang utang. Sa example na ito, ang second element na that he sees anything belonging to his debtor ay present. Pangatlo, na ang pag-agaw ng bagay at maisakatuparan sa pamamagitan ng paraan ng karahasan o pagpapakita ng material na persa nagdudulot ng pananakot. Ang light coercion ay kagaya ng grave coercion kasi may karahasan at pananakot. Pero ang pinagkaiba ng grave coercion at light coercion, sa light coercion, dapat merong utang, nagpautang, at umutang. Pang-apat na elemento, na ang layunin na nagkasala ay ilapat ang pareho sa pagbabayad ng utang. Take note, lagi nating tatandaan sa light coercion, ang offender ay purpose niya palagi ay gamitin na pambayad sa utang. Then, kapag present ang first and third element at wala ang second element ng grave coercion na he prevention or compulsion be affected by violence, threat, or intimidation, magiging light coercion lang. Next, the second paragraph of Article 287. Any other coercion or unjust vexations shall be imposed by arresto minor or a fine ranging from 5 pesos to 200 pesos or both. Last, unjust vexation. Ang ibig sabihin lang ng unjust vexation, ito ang krimen na nagawa mo dahil iniinis ka o kinagalit ka lang at walang involved na injury. Unjust vexation, it can be anything under the sun. Article 288, other similar coercions. Ang Artikulo 288 ay tungkol sa sapilitang pagbili ng paninda at pagbayad ng sahod sa pamamagitan ng mga token. Halimbawa, may boss sa trabahador. Ibig na si boss ibigay na sahod ay pera, binigay niya sa kanyang mga trabahador ay grocery. Kapag ang isang tao ay pinagtrabaho ka tapos hindi naman pera ang natanggap mo, pwede mo siyang kasuhan. Ang parusa ng aresto mayor o isang multa mula 200 hanggang 500 o pareho ay dapat ipataw sa sinumang tao, ahente o opisyal ng anumang asosasyon o korporasyon na puwersa o pumipilit, direkta o hindi direkta o sadyang mapagpahintulot sa sinumang manggagawa o empleyadong pinagtatrabuhan niya o ng naturang kumpanya o korporasyon na mapipilitan o na bumili ng paninda, At huli, mga kalakal ng anumang uri. Ang mga sumusunod ay ipinagbabawal na gawain or prohibited acts. First, forcing or compelling, directly or indirectly, or knowingly permitting the forcing or compelling of the laborer or employee of the offender to purchase merchandise or commodities of any kind from him. Second, paying the wage due his laborer or employee by means of token or objects other than the legal tendency currency of the Philippines, unless expressly requested by such laborer or employee. Element number 1. First, na ang nagkasala ay sino mang tao, ahente o opisyal ng anumang asosasyon o korporasyon. Pangalawa, na siya, nasabing kumpanya o korporasyon ay may mga manggagawa o empleyado. Pangatlo, na pinipilit, direkta o hindi direkta o sadyang pinahintulutan na pilitin o pilitin ang sino man sa kanyang manggagawa o empleyado na bumili ng paninda, mga kalakal ng anumang uri mula sa kanya o mula sa nasabing kumpanya o korporasyon. Element number 2. Una, ang mga offender nagpapahid ng sahod na dapat bayaran ng isang manggagawa o empleyado sa pamamagitan ng token o bagay. Pangalawa, na ang mga token o bagay na iyon ay iba sa legal na pera ng Pilipinas. At huli, ang pangatlo, na ang naturang empleyado o manggagawa ay hindi hayagang humiling na siya ay bayaran sa pamamagitan ng mga token o bagay.
Article 289, Formation, Maintenance, and Provision of Combination of Capital or Labor through Violence or Threats. Yung element number 1, sinasabi lang dito na nakararanas sila ng pananakit, ng pagbabanta, ng compel or force para magtrabaho sa kanila ng libre or pasusweldohin ka nga nila, hindi naman sapat or hindi naman nararapat dun sa tinrabaho mo dahil halimbawa na lang overtime ka ng overtime, minsan kulang yung ibibigay na sweldo sa'yo. So, number 2 is ang sinasabi lang dito na hindi ka nila pinapayagang gumawa o bumuo, sumali sa mga labor organizations. Ganon. Parang hindi nila pinapagamit sa yung freedom of speech. Pinagbabawalan ka nila. Sabi naman ng RPC, the act should not be a more serious offense. Pero, kung merong nangyari sa iyo or present yung physical injuries or death dun sa exercise na ginagawa nila, the act should be punished in accordance with other provisions of the code. Dito nga sa Article 289, any person na nag-commit ng crime na ito ay mahatulan ng aresto mayor o pagkakakulong ng 1 buwan at 1 araw at hanggang 6 na buwan at magbabayad ng multang hindi tataas sa 300 pesos.
I'm going to discuss Article 290, Discovering Secrets Through Seizure of Correspondence of Title 9, Chapter 3. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium period and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon any private individual who, in order to discover the secrets of another, shall seize his papers or letters and reveal the contents thereof. If the offender shall not reveal such secrets, the penalty shall be arresto mayor and the fine not exceeding 500 pesos. The provisions shall not be applicable to parents, guardians or persons entrusted with the custody of minors with respect to the papers or letters of the children or minors placed under their care or study, nor to spouses with respect to the papers or letters of either of them. So, who shall be held liable under this article? The offender is a private individual or even a public officer not in the exercise of his official function. Second, that he seizes the papers or letters of another. Third, that the purpose is to discover the secrets of such other person, and that the offender is informed of the contents of the papers or letters seized. So, in simple term po, ang offender po ay isang private individual or public officer na kung saan binuksan niya o inalam niya yung nilalaman ng isang confidential paper or documents upang malaman po yung sekreto nito or yung nilalaman nito.
Article 291. Revealing secrets with abuse of office. Meron siyang tatlong elements. Ito ay that the offender is manager, employee, or servant. That he learns the secrets of his principal or master in such capacity. And that he reveals such secrets. Ang damage ay hindi siya kasama sa elements. According to Article 291, when a manager, employee, or servant in an office discloses his discovered secret of his employer or boss in his employed office, the Arresto Mayor will be liable as punishable and a fine of 500 pesos. It is clearly stated in the elements that the person in question is a manager, employee, or office assistant. The secret is learned through his or her position in office at inihayag niya ang kanyang natuklasan. For example, sa isang company office ng isang sikat na fast food, ang manager lamang ang nakakalam ng secret formula or recipe ng kanilang product. Ang assistant manager ay inassign at in charge na mag-ingat ng recipe ng kanilang masarap na food. It is unthinkable that he said this especially to the restaurant owners and was able to say what their recipe was, and other fast foods imitated their recipe. So, the assistant manager is liable under Article 291 of the Revised Penal Code.
The Article 292 of Revised Penal Code of Book 2, Title 9. The revelation of industrial secrets. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods and the fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon the person in charge, employee, or workman of any manufacturing or industrial establishment who, to the prejudice of the owner thereof, shall be reveal the secret of the industry of the letter. The element of Article 292. First, the offender is a person in charge, employee, or workman of manufacturing or industrial establishment. 2. That the manufacturing industrial establishment has a secret of industry which the offender has learned. 3. That the offender reveals such secrets. 4. The prejudice is caused to the owner. Example po dito ay yung nagtatrabaho ko po sa isang manufacturing or industrial establishment na mga ketchup, toyo. Bago sasabihin mo po yung ingredients or secret formula niya dun sa kalaban sa ibang manufacturing.